Hello, my name is James Arroyo, and welcome to Chapter 4, Listening. Previously, we've been discussing what communication is, but we are now going to be discussing one of the big breakdowns, or potential breakdowns, and that is a lack of listening. So, we're going to try to improve our listening. Have you ever felt like you were not being listened to? How did you react? A lot of times when we feel like we are not being listened to, we react by either pushing further, saying, hey, listen to me in all sorts of ways, or that we retreat. Well, I'm not going to be listened to anyway, so why deal with it? But both of these reactions only escalate tensions within a relationship. So we are going to learn how to listen more effectively, and not only that, show that we are listening effectively. Another thing so the goal of this chapter is twofold. First, we are going to learn how to listen more effectively so that way we are able to apply this lesson to our interpersonal relationships as well as in our group relationships. But we are also going to be transferring it to public speaking. A big reason why we're transferring it to public speaking is because you are going to be presenting in this class. And if you feel like you are not being listened to, that I would argue would be not a very supportive classroom climate. So, we are going to try to build this skill and refine this skill of listening so that we all feel included as we are presenting in this class. So, let's jump right in. We start with why. Why is learning about listening important? First, it builds relationships through respect and trust. Listening shows respect because it shows in a very tangible way that you respect what they have to say, and therefore it is worth listening to. So, that is how we build relationships through respect by listening. We also, when someone else is communicating and we are listening, we are showing, the person feels like they can trust you with that information. And funny enough, the adverse is true as well. That if we don't listen, then we are going to diminish respect and trust in these situations. So we really want to improve our listening skills. It also gives us knowledge we would not otherwise acquire. Keep in mind, have you ever had a class where maybe you could have listened a little bit better? Maybe you could have paid attention a little bit more, not in this class, obviously, but in other classes. I don't know about you, but I've been in those sorts of situations. And as a result, I didn't learn as much and wasn't able to bring those lessons into other classes. So, by improving our listening skills, it will help us acquire that knowledge. Also, it gains a better understanding of those around us, leading to more social capital. There are probably around 50% of people who will disagree with your ideas and whose ideas you will disagree with. So, a big challenge to listening is when we hear diverse perspectives or different opinions, then we shut off to it. We don't want to listen to that information. But what we are losing is this social capital, this ability to understand people, find consensus, and find mutually satisfying conclusions. On top of that, even if we can't find these mutually satisfying conclusions, we are still able to understand the other person more, and as a result, adapt our message to their perspective. In other words, to communicate more effectively in a way that they are able to understand it. We also help improve our critical listening skills, so we will not be persuaded by faulty logic. Sometimes we will just simply passively agree with someone because they are like us in some sort of way, or maybe they have shown identification with us in some way, and that is faulty logic. So we want to find ways to, so by learning how to listen more effectively, we are also diminishing the effect of faulty logic on us. And the last one is, it's a kind of silly quote, but you already know what you think. Have you ever been in an argument and you're fighting back and forth, and it seems to be going nowhere? I've been in this situation many times. I remember one time, me and my sister, we were having an argument. I don't even remember what it was about. It really didn't matter. But my dad pulled me to the side and he's like, "Hey, why are you not listening to your sister?" And I'm like, "Well, she's not listening to me, obviously." He then said this quote, "You already know what you think, so you should listen to what she has to say." And that really struck a chord with me because what do I have to gain from this communication situation? My main goal was to try to convince her. But what do I really gain from convincing her? Maybe a little bit of self-esteem, maybe a little bit of like, yes, I won, but not much else. But what do I have to gain by listening? I could have a new understanding of my sister, a new perspective from my sister's point of view, and also perhaps new understandings of this idea as a whole. And I could even change my mind to a more correct point of view. So, I already know what I think, so why is it my main goal to try to convince someone else? My main goal, the way that I can gain the most from this is by listening. So that really speaks to the idea that by being able to listen, it expands our potential. So now let's talk about some of the dangers of poor listening. What happens when we listen poorly? First, it can have a negative impact on the speaker. Unlike TV, where you can just walk away and it'll keep on going, when you aren't listening, it has a negative impact on the speaker. It just does. So, when we are not listening, so we want to be sure that we are listening and having a positive impact on our speaker because guess what? They are going to listen to you as well. We also have a negative impact on communication as a whole. Have you ever felt like you were not being listened to? Absolutely, we have. And that leads to either a fight reaction or a flight reaction. Fight reaction, when we feel like we're not being listened to, we feel disrespected, a lack of trust in the relationship, and we either fight, "Hey, listen to me. Why aren't you listening to me? You're being very rude." Or flight reaction, just withdraw from the conversation, withdraw from the relationship entirely. And while sometimes this can be a good strategy in some unique cases, usually both of these reactions will diminish the relationship as a whole and communication with that partner as a whole as well. So we definitely want to be listening. Oh, a good example of this would be back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I worked at Disneyland. And basically, I was in charge of character hosts, and their job was to say, "Hey, sorry, the character has to leave, but he or she will be coming back at this time." And obviously, the guests didn't appreciate this very much. They were like, "I have 5 minutes to get to Indiana Jones, so I need to go now." And the host then reiterated what they had said and then just shut down. Because guess what? If you are asked that same question and have that same negative reaction like hundreds of times a day, of course you're going to stop listening. Then, when the guest felt like they weren't being listened to, they then engaged in either that flight reaction, which wasn't an issue because they just walked away, or the fight reaction, which then I had to come in and fix. And how did I fix it? I simply listened. I reiterated what they had said. I said, yeah, that really is unfortunate, and I can see how that can be very challenging. And that, yeah, I love Indiana Jones too. That being said, he or she is going to be coming back in 5 minutes. I can even wait with you over here, and then we'll go ahead and meet this character together. And it was that little bit of listening, the little bit of understanding and trying to connect with the other person through listening, that is what solves 9 out of 10 problems. Because it shows respect and trust. And a lot of times the reason why people have these overreactions is because they feel like they are not being respected and there is trust being broken down. And then one of the last big dangers is message distortions. We can omit certain information or miss the entire message. And we can also add information that wasn't even communicated, but because we weren't listening, we just start creating things. And then we also have substitution, confusing certain portions of the message with different information. So there's many dangers of poor listening, but now we are going to talk about the different types of listening. There are 4 key types. First, there is appreciative listening. Appreciative listening is listening for pleasure and enjoyment. This happens with podcasts, with music, with even certain speeches. We listen to them to gain enjoyment from them. And there are even distinct cases where there are things that we listen to that are bad for enjoyment as well. We also have relational listening. Relational listening is listening to provide emotional support, and this is a very interesting distinction between empathy and sympathy. Empathy is this sort of relational listening to try to support the other person emotionally, whereas sympathy is in essence not as helpful and a little bit judgmental. So we want to be sure that we are engaging in empathy over sympathy, and we also have informational listening. Informational listening is listening to understand the message of the speaker. Guess what? You are doing this right now by listening to this message and the intricacies of the different types and dangers and benefits of listening. You are understanding complex ideas to then apply to your life. And then lastly, we have critical listening. Critical listening is listening to evaluate for purposes of it accepting or rejecting the information. This a lot of times happens in political listening. The person has a R in front of their name or a D in front of their name, Republican or Democrat. We are going to listen to them a lot more differently than if it was someone nonpartisan. So we listen. We may listen to reject more for someone who is against our point of view, whereas we may be more accepting of someone who is already with our point of view. So we critically listen. Okay, those are the types of listening, as well as the dangers, as well as the benefits. Now, in the next section, we're going to be talking about the 5 stages of listening.